Thank you, Ann, and thank you all for attending today. I'm honored to be here on this Memorial Day to talk to you about an iconic warship, my experience on that ship, and the importance of this holiday and why it is so meaningful to me. After high school, it was an easy decision for me to enlist in the Navy because there's a legacy of military service in our family. My maternal grandfather, who had an exemption because he was studying engineering at Illinois, decided it was his duty to serve our country during World War II. He joined the Army and served in Europe, where he fought in the Battle of the Bulge. His brother, my great uncle, was an Army Air Force pilot who perished when his bomber was shot down over Europe. My father served in the Air Force during the Korean War. My uncle served in the Army during the Vietnam War. And I'm happy and proud to tell you my youngest son, Louis, will continue the family tradition by serving in the Coast Guard after he graduates from high school next week. He's playing drums in the band back there. As Ann mentioned, I served 4 years on the battleship USS Iowa. Known as the Battleship of Presidents, the Iowa has a long and fascinating history. She was the lead vessel of 4 of the newest class of battleships that were the fastest, most powerful, most heavily armored warships ever built. They were engineering marvels. To give context, the Iowa was 880 feet long. That's 3 football fields. It was 108 feet wide and 175 feet tall. That's above the water line, which is about as tall as the Statue of Liberty. And her draft was 37 feet, so from the water line down to the hull, it was 37 feet. The ship displaced 58,000 tons and was capable of reaching speeds in excess of 30 knots, around 35 miles an hour. She could carry 2.5 million gallons of fuel, which allowed for a range of 18,000 miles. But what truly defined the Iowa was her armament. The battleship was equipped with 9 16-inch 50 caliber naval guns arranged in 3 turrets. These guns could fire armor-piercing shells that were 4.5 feet long and weighed 2,500 pounds, distances up to 25 miles. This allowed the battleship to engage enemy vessels and coastal targets from beyond their retaliation range. Because of her big guns, she earned the nickname the Big Stick, and her motto was, "Our liberties we prize, our rights we will maintain." The Iowa was originally commissioned in February 1943 during World War II. In November, she was assigned to transport President Roosevelt and key military advisors across the Atlantic to the Tehran Conference with Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin. Interesting fact, because FDR had polio and was confined to a wheelchair, the Iowa had to be outfitted with a bathtub, and to this day is the only United States Navy ship with a bathtub on board. She was then transferred to the Pacific Theater, where she earned 9 battle stars. The Iowa escorted carrier task forces, bombed shore positions, and provided artillery support during invasions of Japanese-held islands, including Okinawa and Honshu. She served as Admiral Bull Halsey's flagship for the Japanese surrender in Tokyo Bay, accompanied by her sister ship, the USS Missouri. The actual surrender was signed on the quarterdeck of the Missouri on September 9th, 1943. Another interesting fact, President Truman chose the Missouri instead of the Iowa to host the surrender ceremony because it was named after his home state. After World War II, the Iowa saw action during the Korean War, serving as the 7th Fleet flagship. She earned 2 more battle stars for her service, becoming one of the most decorated United States naval ships. She was subsequently decommissioned in 1958. In 1980, Ronald Reagan was elected president, and he had a plan to rebuild our military to counter the growing threat from the Soviet Union. As part of his plan for a 600-ship Navy, the Iowa was modernized, reactivated, and recommissioned in 1984 by then Vice President George H.W. Bush. I reported on board in August '85 and became one of 1,500 crew members who pledged to support and defend the Constitution of the United States and carry out the Navy's mission to maintain freedom of the seas. I served on the Iowa from '85 to '89. We traversed 4 oceans and many different seas, crossed the equator and the Arctic Circle, transited the Panama and Suez canals, and visited 14 different countries. During that time, we conducted a variety of training and NATO exercises before being called in January 1988 to escort Kuwaiti tankers into and out of the Persian Gulf during the Iran-Iraq War. The Iowa was also used as the test bed for the Navy's RQ-2 drone that was used as an aerial spotter for the battleship's guns. This was the precursor to the modern drones that we use in warfare today. My favorite Navy experience occurred in New York City during the 4th of July holiday in 1986. We were on hand to participate in a 3-day celebration of the 100th anniversary of the Statue of Liberty. On July 4th, President Ronald Reagan and First Lady Nancy Reagan boarded the Iowa to view the International Naval Review in New York's Hudson River. Numerous countries, ships, dignitaries, and performers took part in the festivities. The event was capped off that evening with a 30-minute fireworks display, followed by a Beach Boys performance on top of the ship's turret number 3. This print that I have on display here was given to every crew member that participated in that ceremony. On April 19, 1989, tragedy struck when the Iowa suffered one of the worst peacetime losses of life in U.S. naval history. During a gunnery exercise near Puerto Rico, an explosion occurred within Iowa's number 2 turret when powder bags on an open middle gun breech ignited. Gunners' mates below deck quickly flooded number 2 powder magazine, preventing further catastrophic damage to the ship. The damage control crew was able to contain and extinguish the fire within 90 minutes. Unfortunately, 47 of my shipmates were killed that day. The Navy subsequently investigated, concluding that a sailor had caused the explosion deliberately. However, the officers and crew of the Iowa were skeptical of the report. Sandia National Laboratories and the Government Accounting Office conducted a second investigation, and their findings conflicted with the Navy's. Sandia and the GAO found that an accidental overram of the powder bags most likely caused the explosion. George H.W. Bush returned to the Iowa then as president on April 24, 1989. He joined the crew and families for a memorial service at Naval Base Norfolk. I vividly remember his words. "We join today in mourning for the 47 who perished and in thanks for the 11 who survived. They all were, in the words of a poet, the men behind the guns. They came to the Navy as strangers, served the Navy as shipmates and friends, and left the Navy as brothers in eternity. In the finest Navy tradition, they served proudly on a great battleship, USS Iowa. They are under a different command now, one that knows no rank, only love, knows no danger, only peace. May God bless them all." This is why Memorial Day is so important to me. I lost 47 shipmates, some who were close friends. They served to carry out the Navy's mission to maintain freedom of the seas and to protect our constitutional rights. Today is the day to remember and honor them. And my hope is that we will never forget all Americans who died to give us our freedoms and died protecting those freedoms. It is our duty to ensure that their stories are not lost with time. Through stories, their memory and the impact they had on this great nation will live on. Going back to COVID and up to today, we've seen unprecedented attacks on our freedom of speech, due process, the rule of law, our freedom of worship, basically an entire Bill of Rights. Reflect today on our precious Constitution in this great country, and don't ever be afraid to make sacrifices to protect it, because freedom isn't free. Benjamin Franklin said, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty or safety." Before I wrap up, I'd like to update you on the battleship Iowa. She was decommissioned in October of 1990 and was assigned to the Reserve Fleet in Suisun Bay near San Francisco. In 2011, the Iowa was donated to LA-based nonprofit Pacific Battleship Center. She was permanently moved to berth 87 at the Port of Los Angeles and is now open to the public as the USS Iowa Museum and is home to the National Museum of the Surface Navy. And a little plug, if you're ever in Los Angeles, the Iowa was rated one of the top 10 transactions or attractions in Los Angeles. And we were out there with the family in 2017. Both of my boys got to go on board, meet some of my former shipmates, and they'll tell you it was the favorite thing they did on that 12-day trip. Thank you all, and may God bless all those who died while serving the United States Armed Forces.